I'm convinced that the majority of business owners are not qualified to be business owners. They're missing their calling. I got to be honest, over the last 60 days, I've asked myself that question over and over. Man, Justin, I know I've been a business owner for 30 years, but should I be? Have you ever just stepped back and started questioning yourself? Scripture says, wherever your treasure is, your heart is. But for us entrepreneurs, our treasure is often the calling that we have on our lives. And our heart is 100% dedicated nonstop to that calling. Are you flourishing within your present position? Are you excelling? Are you energized? And I have to really ask the question, should you be a business owner? Business owners are failures. Think about that statement. There's a lot of truth to it, but at the same token, it rattles me. It makes me question some things. Are we, as business owners, failures? My son Jude, who's about 12, 13 years old, he walks around the house now and he says, "You're a failure." And he actually says this a little bit of a snarky voice. He heard something on some trend somewhere on social media using this failure. And it's like this long word. And whenever there's a mishap, he throws it out there and we giggle and we laugh. But in the back of my head, it's been back there now for some time. And recently I heard that business owners are failures. And it shook me at my core. So I began doing a dive into, well, is that even true? As I look back at my 30 years of being a business owner and now some 20 years of coaching business owners, I honestly believe it is very true. Honestly believe it is extremely true that many business owners are indeed failures. Failures in business, failures in other things. And as we look at this, I have to question myself more deeply and say, the people who are business owners, should they even be a business owner? I found some statistics which I thought were amazing. 8.7% of business owners presently are optimistic about the future, according to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Only 8.77% are even optimistic about the future. That surprises me. I mean, I'm sitting here looking like, man, I am so excited. I am ready to roll. Here we go. But yet only 8.77% say that's the case. Only 60% of business owners say that their business is in good health. Not excellent, not fair, good. Only 60%. That means 40% of business owners think that their business is in poor health. Friends, that's dismal. 20% of business owners will fail in the first year. We know the statistics from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Department. 50% of business owners will fail in the first 5 years. Think about this. Only 9% of business owners will make more than $1 million a year. Only 9% of us. That's according to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Only 39% of business owners are very happy. That means 60% of business owners are not very happy. They're miserable. That's from Guidant Financial. And according to the Exit Planning Institute, roughly only 18% of businesses will ever transact, will ever sell. So as I start hearing the statistics and I look at my own observations, I really start questioning people who call themselves business owners. Are they truly failures in business? Not in life. I get that I'm using this tongue in cheek because it's in my head with Jews walking around saying, "You're a failure," right? I'm not talking about a failure in life, but are they in the wrong seat? Friends, I got to tell you, I talk to several hundred, if not thousands of business owners per year. And when I hear business owners who come to me with various questions, they're not questions that a successful business owner will ask. They're questions like, why am I stuck? Man, fear has me gripped. Studying fear and anxiety has me gripped to immobility. I can't move forward. I can't even see what the future is. So today I want to dive deep. And this is, in this new platform, as I'm here to try to challenge you and try to encourage you and inspire you and educate you and encourage myself, inspire myself and educate myself for this next chapter. As I'm super excited, as I often say, charging hell with a water pistol. I want to sincerely ask the question. I want you to think about it. Should you be a business owner? It's a tough conversation. It's a conversation that I don't think many of us are willing to have with ourselves. Those of us who've been in the business ownership seat for some time, we can tell you that this is not the yellow brick road. This is not life as a box of chocolates. This is a hard, devastating path to walk. I've been a business owner for 30 years. I often say in jest, I'm an 85-year-old in a 45-year-old's body. Man, business ownership has its toll on mental, spiritual, financial, social, so many aspects, psychological. Yeah. It has a toll on us. So I want to dive into the question, should you be a business owner? Now, for sakes of conversation points today, I'm going to compare and contrast the entrepreneur versus the intrapreneur. But I want to set my definitions proper to begin with. When I'm talking about entrepreneur, I'm using that term as a synonym for a business owner. Now, notice I'm saying business owner, not a business manager. Several business owners are doing nothing more than managing a business. They're just holding it at just, him-ha. They're keeping it at ground zero. They've annuitized their business. To me, the business owner is an entrepreneurial type spirit where they're driving, they're moving, they have a destination that they're trying to accomplish. They have something that is burning deep within them. So when I use the word today, entrepreneur, I'm interchanging that word with this concept of a business owner, not necessarily a business manager. And there are many owners that really in life or practice are nothing more than a business manager. So let's think about this definition of entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is an individual who identifies opportunities in the marketplace and takes calculated risk to create and manage a new business venture. They see a need and they know that they can fulfill the need and they take risk, but they take calculated risk. There's a risk reward metric that they're doing in order to drive forward and accomplish that goal. So that's my definition of an entrepreneur. Now, when we think about entrepreneurs, let's dive in a little bit further into what are these personality types? What is an entrepreneur's characteristics? Well, we've already identified one, and that is their risk taking. They're willing to take some risk. They understand that risk and reward go hand in hand. I use this example many times, especially when I'm on stage. I love to watch the audience's face when they internalize this particular question. Just imagine you have two individuals who are in an airplane and there's only one parachute. The plane is going down. It is going down. It is going to crash. Who has the greatest risk? The person who puts on the parachute and jumps out of the plane, or the one who jumps out of the plane? Now, naturally, we say, man, the guy who jumps out of the plane, he has the greatest risk. No, he doesn't. He knows or she knows their destiny. They're going to splat. It's going to be a bug on the windshield. The person who has the risk is the person who puts on the parachute. Because what if the parachute doesn't open? There's a what-if scenario. It's a calculated decision. I'm willing to put this parachute on so that I don't end up being the bug on the windshield. I don't splat. Now, I know that's a little bit of a crass example, but I want to drive home this idea of risk. Risk is about calculating a move to an outcome. So entrepreneurs are risk takers. They're innovative thinkers. They're problem solvers. They can see a need and they're calculating, how can I fulfill this need? And here is the solution. And if this doesn't work, this will work. I think what's interesting about the innovation of entrepreneurs is that we're willing to accept failure. We're willing to fall flat on our face time and time and time again. I've met many people who started their entrepreneurial journey, their business owner journey, in the sales department of a company. One individual sticks in my mind greatly. He was an individual that's no longer with us, but he started his career selling vacuums door to door. And I'm like, man, how was it? He goes, it was amazing. And I'm like, you've lost your mind. There is no way that I'm going to go door to door and sell vacuums. He said, why? I said, because I'm going to have the door slammed in my face. It's a humility. And then I stopped. He said, it's a calculation, Justin. It's a calculation. He knew there was a risk and he had an innovation that he wanted to push out. And this person became hyper successful by whatever terms that the world might define success. Another interesting thing about entrepreneurs is their adaptability is paramount. Whenever turmoil, whenever headwinds, whenever things just doesn't work out, yeah, they may go through this little discouragement. I can remember my own career. years ago, I would have things that just didn't work out the way I anticipated to. And as a planner type mind, I'm one who can, hey, if this happens, I can go here. If it doesn't go here. And sometimes I miss a step. In my earlier days, man, I'd be bummed. And I'd be down for a day or two or three. And sometimes if there are major moves, it would take me a couple of weeks to get over it. Now it's like, okay, let's go. But a business owner and entrepreneurs, one of their amazing characteristics is adaptability. When things come at them, they can take it, internalize it, solution it, and move forward. Another one is their vision and their determination to the vision. It's another characteristic of entrepreneurs that's amazing to me. As I'm relaunching this podcast, friends, I can tell you where we will be in 10 years. I can tell you. Now, it's interesting. I think it was Zig Ziglar who says we always underestimate what the 10-year outcome would be, and we overestimate what we can do in 1 year. But friends, I can already see in my mind's eye where we'll be in 10 years as we relaunch this podcast. And there is no apprehension behind me. I know exactly where we are going. I can't control the outcome, but I can control my day-to-day activities. And for many of us who are entrepreneurial spirits, we know that we see where we're going to be, and we are determined. My goodness, we're determined. You say, Justin, were you born that way? Well, according to my mom, I was. She reminds me of the story oftentimes where I'm sitting at the Christmas table, and I love, even to this day, black olives. I love black olives on pizza, thin crust, meat lovers, no pineapples. I think we know that by now. I love black olives. And she said, Justin, you were about a year and a half, 2 years old, and I had this black olives on the table, and you wanted to reach some, and you ate a few, but you kept going after them. And so I reached out and I popped your hand. And you looked at me. Got that look on your face, and so then you stuck your wrist out to test me. Did she really mean that I can't have these black olives? She goes, and I popped your wrist. She goes, and then you stuck your elbow out. And she goes, I'm trying not to giggle. I popped your elbow. And it wasn't anything that would be child abuse or anything of that nature. It was just, no, we're not going to do that. She goes, and you looked at me with this determination that I'm going to get those olives. And you reached out with your hand and like you were reaching in to try to bite the olives, and I popped your mouth, and you just finally said, And you sat on the couch, crossed your hands, and you're just like, I cannot get to those olives. She goes, I walked away, and you had consumed the whole bowl of olives. So it's this determination that many of us are born with, that someone says no, we're going to like, I'll prove you wrong. Let's go. Here we go. I tell often the story about the day I went fishing. It changed my life. I told my mom, I said, I want to go fishing today. She goes, go fishing. I said, I can't. The trolling motor's in my dad's truck. It's at the Georgia Port Authority, which was 20 miles into town. She said, figure it out. I grabbed a shovel and had the most amazing fishing day of my life because of determination. And this is the spirit that entrepreneurs have. You know, what's probably interesting about entrepreneurs is we have this deep independence. We almost innovate independence. For me, if someone tells me that I have to do something, you have to walk this way and talk this way, not going to happen. I've had coaches in my own life say, well, Justin, you should wear a suit and tie every single day. Not who I am. Hey, Justin, you should speak in this way. It's not who I am. Hey, Justin, you get excited. Bring it down a notch. That's not who I am. I am independent. I am uniquely and wonderfully made, the scripture says. And God has designed me for a particular role. And as I look at this entrepreneurial spirit, that's me. That is me 100%. You say, well, Justin, I don't necessarily have all those possessions. That's okay. I want to introduce another player that often gets overlooked in today's society. And that's this intrapreneur. An intrapreneur. What is an intrapreneur? It's a person who is an employee within an organization who exhibits entrepreneurial qualities and behaviors, but they're working to create within a bound. They're working to create within an ecosystem. They're working within the infrastructure of the company. And friends, I got to tell you, entrepreneurs are amazing individuals. If you find somebody who has the quality and the characteristics of an entrepreneur, but they want to work within a specific bound, and you compare them with a seasoned entrepreneur, man, the world is unstoppable. You know, what is that old saying, the world is your oyster? Yeah, I'm not a big fan of oysters. I just not. Tastes like slimy boogers. So let's talk about entrepreneurs. You know, they are innovative and they're creative. They're known for their abilities to think creatively, and they come up with innovative solutions to existing problems and opportunities within a set framework. They're very powerful about that. They seek ways to improve processes or products or services within the organization. They see where the organization is headed and they can say, hey, here's how we fix this particular movement. It's pretty interesting the way an intrapreneur works. Now, an intrapreneur is also a risk taker, but they're a risk taker within a framework. They're similar to entrepreneurs in the sense that they are willing to take calculated risks, but they do so within the boundaries set forth by the organization. If you can find an intrapreneur, or if you perhaps are thinking about this right now, if you're like, man, Justin, just tell me how to do this and I can make it happen, then perhaps you are an intrapreneur. You need to be paired within an entrepreneur who can come up with all the ways and create a structure, and then you can fulfill the structure. So they're risk takers, but they're risk takers within a framework. And they're passionate. They're passionate. See, a true intrapreneur will approach their day-to-day task as if they are the owner of the company. They will look at it, try to place themselves in the owner's eyes, and then carry out the owner's vision, the mission, the objective, try to improve, as we mentioned earlier, the product or the service, because they want the company to succeed, because they know if the company succeeds, ultimately they succeed. What's interesting about an entrepreneur is they have cross-functionality capabilities. Many times employees, and I'm not speaking about employees, but they are designed for a particular task. I can remember back in my landscape days, I had an employee who was very talented in the fact that he could see the landscape. He knew where the plants would go. But if I had tried to get him on the irrigation crew, it was a failure. If I tried to get this employee on the maintenance crew, it was a failure. It wasn't what he was gifted for. So this employee rose to the ranks and was very quickly discovered as the person who could do the landscaping, and he's excelled at it. He was energized by that. What's often is an entrepreneur can play multiple roles within a company, very similar to an entrepreneur. They can play multiple roles, but it's still within a framework. They love collaboration. They love working with colleagues in different departments to bring the entire picture into focus. And finally, entrepreneurs are results-oriented people. Now, interestingly enough, an entrepreneur like myself, I want to see results. But if the results don't come today, I'm okay with it. It doesn't bother me. Now, I want to see results long term. I realize, as I mentioned earlier, that each one of my actions are carrying me to an outcome that I can already see. I'm already there in my mind. It's like I know, I'll just lay it out there. I can see myself today. I'm not there quite yet, but I can see myself today on a stage in front of 20,000 people, pointing them through to a success, motivating them that, hey, you can accomplish this. I can already see myself in that position. Say, Justin, man, have you ever done that? Nope. Never been in front of 20,000 people. I've been in front of a few thousand. I've had fun time with that, but I've never had the opportunity at this point in my career to be in front of 20,000 people. I can see myself in the future already motivating tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of people to recognize that, hey, God has something powerful for your life, greater than you ever imagined, and all you got to do is have a little bit of faith that He'll take you there. I can see myself today motivating millions of people. Am I doing that presently? Nope, not presently. Now, are we motivating hundreds of thousands? Yes, but tens of millions? Not yet. But man, I can see it. Now, that's different than a entrepreneur. An entrepreneur wants the results within micro steps. They can see it, they understand it, but they also say, I've got to hit this particular goal today, and I've got to have this goal. They're focused on achieving a tangible outcome. So there's a slight differentiation between an entrepreneur and an intrapreneur, but they're not that different. So let's talk about the similarities. Both entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs have a strong drive, a strong desire for innovation. They're creative thinkers. Both entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs have this ability to adapt to what's important for their particular task ahead of them. Both are results-oriented and they're goals-oriented. Both are passionate. Have you ever seen that team member or an employee within a company who just has that charisma, has that spizmarink, as my grandma used to say, who has that fire in their belly, as we might say in the South? Have you ever just seen that individual? More than likely, they're an entrepreneur. They're not walking in like Eeyore, like, oh, what are we going to do today? They know that they have a mission on that day, and they are excited and they're passionate about what the company's service or the offering that they're delivering. And candidly, both intrapreneurs and entrepreneurs are risk takers. But the similarities continue. They both want ownership. Now, an entrepreneur wants ownership of the entire company. They want to be able to come in and adjust the players on the field and adjust whatever they need to do to reach the desired outcome. The entrepreneur wants ownership over their department, over their project, over their abilities, over their time. They want ownership within a smaller framework. Both entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs are problem solvers. They're persistent. They love collaboration. And so now when we look at these similarities, friends, I'm convinced more than ever, and this is after 30 years of being a business owner and after 20 years of consulting thousands of business owners. I get paid to travel and speak. I write. I do so many influential things with business owners, and I'm convinced that the majority of business owners are not qualified to be business owners. Within their personality, within their mindset, within their framework, within their vision, they missed the target. They are, as my son would say, you're a failure. However, they would be dynamic entrepreneurs. If we go back to those statistics, think about it. 40% of business owners are dissatisfied. Only 18% of business owners actually exit their company. Only under 10% of business owners ever hit $1 million or more in revenue. And to me, that blows my mind. Why? Could it be perhaps they're on the wrong seat? Could it be that you are on the wrong seat? I consult with a few clients right now, and I'm beginning to whittle this down for this new opportunity going forward. And I can honestly say that only a handful of the clients, the business owners that I directly consult with, and they pay me handsomely, friends. They pay me handsomely. Only a few of them are true business owners. Most of them are managers of the business. They're not the entrepreneur business owner that I see. They would be one dynamic entrepreneur. If I could ever get them to see that, hey, these frustrations, these hesitations, your life, this all this that you're dealing with, you would be unbelievable working within an ecosystem underneath an entrepreneur who's not a slave driver that wants to turn you and your creativity, everything we just talked about, turn it loose. But they're misguided. They're missing their calling. You know, I got to be honest, over the last 60 days, I've asked myself that question over and over. Man, Justin, I know I've been a business owner for 30 years, but should I be? Have you ever just stepped back and started questioning yourself? Maybe I'm the only weird one out there. I do this all the time. That was interesting. Why did you do that? Usually it's like, that was interesting. Lord, help me with this. I don't want to make that mistake again. That was dumb. Why'd I do that? That's usually the way my conversation to myself goes. You say, well, Justin, I hear you, but is it just the personalities? You know, not really. There's also risk associated with both positions. There's a risk. So let's just tear apart these risks. For the entrepreneur, there are many, many, many risks. We have financial risk. In other words, you're taking your personal savings and you're deploying it within the business. And more than likely, as I often speak about, if you're the business owner and you're sitting there saying, man, Justin, I just don't like the risk of what I'm dealing with, it's because the majority of your net worth is tied up within your business. One of my liberating factors for me has been to go through yet another transition, to be able to say, hey, my net worth is now not tied up within a business. My net worth is now tied up within my identity. And I want to pour my identity out, and I want to use the influence and the 30 years of knowledge and the thousands of books I've read and the hundreds of experiences I have to impact people. Many entrepreneurs, though, they're dealing with the financial risk. They're dealing with market risk, the uncertainty of the market, the demand within their ecosystem, maybe a competitor, et cetera, within the market. They're dealing with product development risk. Hey, how do we develop this? Over the last 30 days, my mind has been flowing with creativity. I have more products and more offerings now coming out of my head than I've ever had in my life. But yet, for many entrepreneurs, that's not the case. They're trapped within this prison of entrepreneurship. There's an operational risk. Can they really leave? I was talking to a business owner this morning. I'm like, could you leave your business for 6 weeks and shut it down and then come back and it still be thriving? He's like, nope, can't leave for a day. I'm like, then you're not a business owner, man. You're a slave to a corporation and you're working for a lunatic and it's you, according to Michael Gerber with eByth. He just got quiet because there's an operational risk that we deal with as entrepreneurs. There's legal risk. There's compliance risk. There's reputation risk. There's talent risk. Man, that's a huge one. What happens if your top employee were to leave? They found another opportunity. I heard Gary Vaynerchuk one time say that I want to develop my team to where they if they find an opportunity, they can go and they can excel to wherever they need to be. I heard him say something along those lines, and I thought at the time, you've lost your ever-loving mind. And now as I sit back now with more wisdom and years now move by and experiences, and I understand what he was saying. I want my team to want to work with me to the mission, the vision. I want them to reap the benefit of serving within their capacities, within their abilities. I want them to be challenged but fulfilled without the stress. I don't want them to feel those statistics that we started the episode off with. I get it now. It's a team risk. We have technology. Holy cow, how much has technology moved? There's a market risk. There's a pricing risk. There are so many risks. I can go through about 25 to 30 risks that I've identified that we entrepreneurs face day in, day out. Exit planning risk. How are we going to cash in on this machine that we've built? At one point in the near future, we're going to have an episode talking about how did I build an 8-figure net worth within a 4-year time period. We're going to talk about that. I'm going to expose my life and show you what it took to build an 8-figure net worth within a 4-year time period. There's an exit risk that directly impacts that entrepreneurs face day in, day out. You know, there's so many risks. I mean, I can identify 25, 30, 40 different risks that an entrepreneur faces, and we'll list them inside the blog on Financially Simple. But the risks are not only a friend, if you will, to the entrepreneur. An entrepreneur, a true entrepreneur, face risk. They deal with resource allocation risk. Do I have enough money to carry out the vision that I've been assigned to? The resistance to change. Man, I can see the path forward within my division, within my company, within this product line, with where we're going. But yet the higher ups, the executives, the department heads, whoever it would be, they don't see it. And there's a resistance to change. Bureaucracy. Oh my goodness. Wow. I've often heard of corporate bureaucracy, but I've seen it firsthand. It would drive me ever-loving crazy. And honestly, an entrepreneur, it frustrates the mess out of them. The lack of support, feeling isolated, compensation of priorities, lack of data, lack of skills, resistance to change, political risk within the company, friends, scalability risk within the company, limited customer adoption. There's so many risks that an entrepreneur faces that they often look and say, well, I'm just going to go be an entrepreneur. If I'm out there as an entrepreneur, I'm not going to have these same risks. True, but you're going to face risk, and you may not be equipped properly to handle the risk. In the same fashion that an entrepreneur may not be equipped properly to handle the risk within the company as an entrepreneur. And so therefore, again, when we look at the risk through our various lenses, obviously the grass is always greener on the other side. I had this old farmer one time tell me, son, you know why the grass is greener on the other side? And I went, no, sir, why? He goes, because there's more crap over there. He was looking out across the cow pasture and he had his cows in there. You could literally see the green grass everywhere. There was a manure pile from the cow. So we're in our positions as an entrepreneur and we're saying, man, I know I'm an entrepreneur, but wouldn't it be nice if somebody else could make this decision? Oh, the grass is greener in the entrepreneur. And then we're an entrepreneur and we're like, man, wouldn't it be great if I could make this decision, not to deal with the bureaucracy, the political issues, or the supply chain disruptions, or whatever other risk, market timing risk, et cetera. Man, I'm just going to go out and start my own company. and they fail miserably. Or they find themselves in a position where they're less than satisfied. Or they find themselves in a position where they're not moving forward because they're in the wrong seat. They looked at a position and they said, hey, I would be better off over there. So when we look at risk for the entrepreneur and the intrapreneur, though they are different, they both of these people, these individuals, are uniquely qualified to handle the risk. I've had this conversation with many of my team members over the past 10 years or so. Some of the things that I dealt with in that entrepreneur, that business owner seat, they would not want to deal with. In fact, just this week, I had an employee say, I'm glad I don't have to make that decision. Now, this employee, by all accounts, is an entrepreneur. This employee is a dynamic entrepreneur. I don't want to make that decision. I'm glad I don't have to. The same token, as I'm watching some maneuvers in various corporations that we work with or consult with, I'm going, man, I could never do that. So there are risks in both positions. Let me ask you, are you maybe over dramatizing the risk? Are you maybe over fantasizing the risk on the other side of the fence? One of the biggest reasons why I'm a business owner is autonomy. It's autonomy. You may say, well, Justin, does an entrepreneur have autonomy? Yeah, they have independence in decision making. The decisions I make are mine, and I can make the decisions, and I have to reap the benefits or the dangers or the rewards or the lack thereof of the decisions, but I have autonomy within the decisions. I also don't have any organizational constraints. As an entrepreneur, as a business owner, there's really no one that is constraining me from doing what I want to do. Many times I'll hear business owners say, if I only could, I'm like, dude, seriously, brother, man, you live in the United States of America. There's nothing that's holding you to do what you're currently doing. Let's change. And then the fear kicks in. And then we begin questioning, and I ultimately find out that they're comfortable. They're maybe a business owner manager, or they really were never a business owner to begin with and probably an entrepreneur. I don't have any organizational constraints. I can make quick decisions as a business owner. I have creative freedom. The very ability for me to change the backdrop, the black backdrop behind us, is my creative freedom. I don't have anybody telling me that I can or can't do that. I like the color blue. I love the color blue. Blue, I've been told my whole life, it looks good on my body. So I can use the color blue when I want to. One of my team members always picks on me. They're like, hey, nice blue shirt today. They look at this shirt, which is blue and gray. I'm like, man, how you like my blue shirt? You're like, dude, that's white. It's a grid system. I like blue. And I have the ability through my creative freedom to be who I want to be, not just within my person, but also within the company. I have personal accountability. I'm accountable to no one except for God about the talents and abilities that He's given me to make sure I'm deploying them. There's a parable that I heard years ago, found in the book of Matthew in scriptures that talks about the master and the servant. And it brings a lot of gravity to my life. And this is part of the relaunch and where my mind is and where I'm going and my envisioning at this point. The parable goes that the master came and gave talents to 3 individuals. He gave 10 talents, which would be money, to one individual. He gave 5 talents to another, and he gave 1 talent to another. The person who received, and then the master went away, right? He said, hey, take care of this. The person who received the 10 talents doubled it. The person who received the 5 talents doubled it. The person who received the 1 talent buried it in the sand. Master comes back and he says, hey, I want to see how you guys did. Person with 10 talents says, hey, here's what I did. You gave me 10, you now have 20. Person who's got the 5 talents, you gave me 5, you now have 10. Person with 1 talent said, hey, I got your talent. I know that you're a shrewd person. I know that you're demanding. I know that you reap where you haven't sown. I know these things, and so therefore I want to protect your money. And then the master scolded the person with 1 talent. He's like, dude, you could at least put it in the bank and I got some interest off of it, but you didn't. You poor decision. So for me, my personal accountability, I'm not driven by trying to please a client, trying to please my family, trying to please you. I wrestled with even resetting the podcast about, man, what's my followers going to think? And ultimately it came down to the decision that I remember an Episcopalian priest told me years ago, and I've referenced him a few times in the last 500 episodes. He said, son, be yourself, be authentic, live an open life in the fact that people can see who you are. And as I move forward in my life, it's like I am personally accountable to the talents, to the gifts that God's given me, and I want to use those talents for His glory and His ability so I can impact millions, tens of millions of people to realize that, hey, God's created you for something that's powerful that only you can do. Now, that's a little different get up, a little different charge, a little different drive that I have as an entrepreneur than maybe someone who is an intrapreneur. An intrapreneur has a limited independence. They want boundaries set on them. And if you set the boundaries, crystal clear boundaries, they work phenomenal within the boundaries. Me, don't I'm going to color outside the lines. I'm not going to color inside the lines. If you tell me to do something, I'm not going to do it. Most entrepreneurs, they just want a little bit of guidance. Just, hey, tell me what you want, then leave me alone. It's a powerful skill set of an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur needs organizational constraints. They need the constraints designed by the company for which they work. They need to feel like they're aligned within the company's goals. If the company's goals or direction is not their goals or direction, then there's misalignment and they're not going to be happy. More than likely, they're going to be a flight risk. They want to be part of the decision-making process. They don't like to be told what to do. They like this collaborative approach. Hey, help me accomplish your vision. Show me what you want. Let me pour my energy into it and let me drive the company forward. And they're accountable to management. Where I look at myself saying, I don't want to be accountable to anybody. I don't want you to do a performance evaluation on me because, trust me, you're not going to like it. An entrepreneur says, how did I do? Did I accomplish what you wanted me to accomplish? And they want the feedback that, hey, I'm doing what you asked me to do. One of my biggest struggles over the last 2 years, and maybe some of you longtime listeners go back and listen to the podcast. Before I sold my company 2 years ago, man, I had this passion that probably is now coming through the microphone or through the video today. I had this passion about, I know where I'm going. But over the last 2 years, my passion has been just squelched. It's like somebody poured a bucket of water on me. And I would come into the podcast and I would do the episode and, man, just wasn't there. And it was like, I'm getting constrained. I can't be who I am. I'm accountable to other people, not to myself. And because of that, I know who I am. I'm going to do the best job I can. The job that's been assigned to me for this period of time, I'm going to do the best thing I can because I'm accountable not just to myself, but to these other players. There's a power in an entrepreneur who recognizes accountability and longs for it. I'm often wondering, when I think about accountability, so many business owners have coaches. Now, look, I'm a big coach person. I have many coaches in my life. We just hired a YouTube coach. We're hiring a podcast coach. I'm hiring a marketing coach. I'm hiring people in my life to help me get better at where I view inefficiencies. I have a dietitian. I have a workout trainer. I have many coaches in my life. So I believe we should all have coaches, but there's a difference. An entrepreneur often wants more frequent accountability. I don't. So maybe some of the business owners, maybe you find yourself needing a coach to hold you accountable to your day-to-day actions. I'd question myself. Are you, as my son would say, a failure? Now, again, I'm using a little bit of levity here for the severity of the conversation, the content, but are you in the right seat, brother? Ma'am? Should you be a business owner? The older I get and the more I work with business owners, the more I realize many business owners should not be business owners. They'd be dynamic entrepreneurs, but not in the right seat. There's a difference even between the innovation and creativity that an entrepreneur like myself would have versus an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur operates independently. We love the independence, whereas an entrepreneur likes to work collaboratively. I let one of my colleagues in on the way my mind works. And I shared a channel with them where I'm putting my thoughts in for Financially Simple, for the Justin Goodbread show, for everything that's going forward. I let them see my thoughts. And I walked into the office, I forget what time it was, and she's like, dude, do you ever sleep? I'm like, yeah, I slept good. Why? She goes, you literally dropped a message last night at 9:30. From 7:30 to 9:30, your brain was just dropping stuff in have this channel set up within our system that says Justin Thoughts, and I let her see it. I'm like, yeah. She goes, and then at 4 o'clock this morning, it continued. I'm like, yeah, no, I slept between 9:45 and 4 o'clock. She's like, do you ever stop? I'm like, nope. Because an entrepreneur is constantly innovating. An entrepreneur is constantly driving forward with independence, whereas an entrepreneur works within the organizational constraints. She's like, Justin, I couldn't do that. whenever I leave, I want to leave. And I get it. I get it. Many times I've often said to myself, I wish I could just leave it at the office. And I've done many different tricks, if you will. I've listened to pundits and gurus talk about how to leave it at the office, but just not wired that way. Scripture says, wherever your treasure is, your heart is. And I believe that the treasure there is obviously a monetary position. Wherever we place our money, that's where our heart follows. But for us entrepreneurs, our treasure is often the calling that we have on our lives. And our heart is 100% dedicated nonstop to that calling. So there's some differences and some similarities within our innovation and our creativity. There's some differences in our innovation and creativity regarding risk. For me as an entrepreneur, I embrace a higher level of risk than what many would do. My mom always says, son, you walk right on the razor's edge. One misstep and everything could go away. I remember having this conversation with her. We're going to talk about the 5 points of wealth coming up in one of the future podcasts. I can remember having this conversation with my mom. I'm like, Mom, I'm 25 years old. If I lose it all tomorrow, I'm okay. And I can remember saying, Mom, I'm 35 years old. If I lose it all tomorrow, I'm okay. And now I say, Mom, I'm 45 years old. If I lose it all tomorrow, I'm okay. And she's going, I don't understand it. My mom is an unbelievable entrepreneur, but she doesn't possess the same risk profile that I have through my creativity, through my organizational structure as I do. Now, an entrepreneur, they are inspired by someone like me. They're inspired, but they tend to be more measured. They're calculative in nature. Have you ever heard paralysis by analysis? Man, I'll tell you, there's a segment of the marketplace and it's dentists. I've worked with hundreds of dentists in my career. And I can honestly say that out of the hundreds I've worked with, there may be only 3 or 4 that should have been business owners. The rest of them would have been dynamic entrepreneurs. But there's only 3 or 4 that probably should have been business owners because they're not calculating the risk in a measured quantity. I think part of the risk, that the difference between the two is the personality makeup that we have. For me, it's no big deal. If I lose it all tomorrow, okay. I'm reminded of the fact that Colonel Sanders, the chicken guy, didn't make his wealth until he was in his 60s. I'm reminded that Ray Kroc, hamburger guy, did not begin his wealth until he was in his mid-50s. So many people begin moving forward in life in the latter part of their life. When I use that word wealth, by the way, in that context, I'm talking about fortune. I'm talking about money. So there's a risk profile, even within our own innovation and our creativity. I'm willing to throw something out there creative-wise and watch it fall flat on its face and be like, cool, that didn't work. Whereas an entrepreneur is like, I'm going to try something. If it doesn't work, I can't do this. I can't handle failure over and over and over and over again. There's even a difference between how we allocate our resources, our resource availability, between the way an entrepreneur thinks and an intrapreneur thinks, especially with regards to creativity. Often, in both cases, there's limited resources. Let's just throw that out there. Whether it be time, whether it be money, whether it be tools, personnel, etc. In both cases, there's limited resources. However, oftentimes an entrepreneur will seek external funding or a way to bootstrap the venture. Whereas an entrepreneur will go through like a parent organization, a bank, or something of that nature. I was teaching one of my colleagues this last week the difference between a true business owner who runs a business from an entrepreneur's perspective versus a corporate type of an entrepreneur. And there's many differences. We're kind of highlighting some of them here today, but one that I've noticed over and over is, for me, if I have an idea, I'm willing to figure out how I'm going to make that idea work. I'll cut my compensation down. I'll borrow money. I'll sell an asset. I'll do something to make it work. And because of this, oftentimes my expenses of this idea are way up here, but my revenue is way down here. I am negative whenever we're looking at it. So for those of you who are on the podcast, the delta between my expenses and my income is beyond negative, right? I'm spending so much more money than I'm making. But I realize through my entrepreneur spirit, through my innovation and creativity, that if I can supercharge on the front end, then I can bring the timeline to success or to profitability. I can shorten it. And I'm willing to sacrifice so much. So here's an insight. How did I build 8 figures within four and a half years roughly? I didn't pay myself anything. My wife and I lived on duct tape. We bootstrapped the company. We paid our team the best we could, and they got pay raises. They were making far more money than I ever made whenever I was in their position. But I was bootstrapped because I could see the vision. An entrepreneur will look at the access to resource within the company, and they'll try to take the access to resources, and they will move forward within that parameter. They're often not going to cut their compensation to achieve the outcome. They're going to get frustrated if the resources are pulled back. And it's not bad. It's just the way that they're created. So I'm an extreme entrepreneur, as you might imagine by now. I'm not an entrepreneur. So when I see that, I don't think that way. And so please forgive me if it sounds like I'm casting that one is better than the other. They're not. In fact, I would dare say that an entrepreneur cannot truly be an entrepreneur without an army of entrepreneurs behind them. I think for every successful entrepreneur, they've been beat up to the point that they have to have the collaborative approach of entrepreneurs behind them to support the vision. So we're different in the sense of our resources. We're different in the sense of our motivation. What motivates us are 2 different aspects, an entrepreneur and an entrepreneur. For me, I'm not motivated by money. I never have been. I heard somebody years ago say, if you let money control you when you have a little, it'll control you when you have a lot. I heard somebody years ago say, money exposes you for who you are. It's a magnifying glass. I heard someone say, hey, if God can't trust you with a little, he's not going to trust you with a lot. So for me, I've never worked for money. My motivation has never been that. It's actually been impact. Even whenever I was building Heritage Investors and Financially Simple and Heritage Business Advisors, I could honestly sit back and say, yes, I'm going to bootstrap this. I'm going to pour dollars into this company, to these companies, and I'm going to impact the team and the clients that I have the honor and privilege to serve. And I saw the impact was rewarded monetarily. It's pretty amazing. Entrepreneurs typically align with the organization's existing market impact or their industry. Remember, they want to plug into the cause, to the culture. They're not going to buck the system or else they're scared of being fired. So their impact is different for them. How that impacts them is different than perhaps me as an entrepreneur. So we look at a couple of things and we get down to this thing of accountability and ownership. Ownership and accountability. Entrepreneurs have personal ownership of their business. They're taking full responsibility for their success and the success of their team. They sit and say, the buck stops with me. An entrepreneur, a true entrepreneur, does not make excuses. They'll be quick to recognize trends. They may not be quick to apologize because many times they're type A personalities, but they're doing what they can and they realize that, hey, everything's rests on their shoulders. Friends, I've talked to too many entrepreneurs in my career. I heard one person say one time, and I've said it many times on the podcast, and Justin, I pay a lot of house payments. I pay a lot of car payments. During COVID, I watched burly men. I'm talking about men's men, the ones that when they shake your hand, you can feel the calluses on their hands. The guys that you want on your back if you find yourself in a deep, dark alley somewhere. You want these hosses with you. I watched them weep, their hearts breaking, tears. I'm sitting here getting emotional thinking about it. Just tears coming down their face over that, hey, I can't do this. I can't bring my team to where I know they need to be. Just ripped apart. There's an ownership and a different accountability. An entrepreneur, friends, I've seen it, and I'm not saying entrepreneurs are bad or evil, but oftentimes their loyalty lies within the organization. their organization and their accountability as to the organizational and to its stakeholders. I have been in meetings where entrepreneurs got misguided and they start talking about cutting employees as if they're just a number, or cutting clients as if they're just a number, and they forget these are people behind them. No, not everybody's that way. In the same fashion, not every entrepreneur is that burly man who's just willing to weep over the care of their team. I realize there's pros and cons on both sides of that, but there's a dynamic difference between the ownership and the personality of the entrepreneur and the intrapreneur when it creates accountability and ownership. There's financial accountability differences. So if the entrepreneur suffers, he or she suffers. It's their personal accountability. It's going to directly impact them. Now, I've seen that work positively and negatively in many business owners' lives. But if we highlight the difference between an entrepreneur who realizes, hey, this is going to directly impact me, to where an entrepreneur is going to say, how is this going to impact the mission or the assignment or the project or the time frame, et cetera. It's more about the company versus an individual position. Again, I realize there could be a direct impact to them individually for failure in that position, but what I'm talking about is the highlight between the two. There's even a difference between strategic decision-making. An entrepreneur makes decisions with the freedom to shape the direction, and they use their vision. They know where they're headed, whereas an entrepreneur makes their decisions based on where the company needs to be and what they've been told the vision of the company is that they've ultimately bought into. There's operational accountability that we have to deal with. The entrepreneur, he's looking or she's looking at the operation saying, hey, is this driving us day to day to the ultimate goal? And if it's not, then I have the ability to change it. An entrepreneur is collaborating with decision makers and saying, hey, you need to change this, you need to change this, you need to change this versus I have to change this. So friends, there's a lot even in when we start talking about ownership and accountability between the entrepreneur and the intrapreneur. Let's bring this plane to the ground. Man, Justin, that's a lot of data points. Yeah, and friends, I had to stop writing because there was so much when I look at this through my lens of 30 years in business, 20 years of consulting business owners. I want to bring us to a point. The old Hebrew word says Selah. Just take a break. I want to ask you this question. Who do you more align with? Are you flourishing within your present position? Are you excelling? Are you energized? Maybe you find yourself, as I'm talking, you're saying, Justin, I'm a business owner, but I'm tired. I don't have that fire in my belly. I realize I should be a business owner, but man, I can't say that I want to charge hell with a water pistol. I'm done. Then I have to really ask the question, should you be a business owner? Maybe you find yourself as a business owner saying, I've been holding at this $1 million number year after year after year. My returns on my company is only 6% per year. I'm happy to even get that. Friends, you realize you'd probably be better to sell your business and invest it somewhere else that could probably give you better returns with less stress. Maybe, just maybe, that you're not the business owner you once were or thought it was going to be. Maybe you jumped from this entrepreneur position to an entrepreneur position and now you're miserable. If that's you, let me ask you a question. Do you have a coach? Do you have a plan? Do you have a strategy? Do you have a way to change the outcome? Let's reverse it. Let's go to the other side of the coin. Maybe you're within an organization. Maybe you said, hey, I find myself in this entrepreneur position. And as you're talking, Justin, I think it would be amazing to deal with those risks. I think it would be amazing to be able to align myself with this entrepreneurial spirit. What's holding you back? Come on. Why haven't you moved? I mean, are you willing today as an entrepreneur, if you find yourself, you're like, dude, I want to be a business owner. Are you willing to go 2, 3, 4, 5 years without a paycheck? Are you willing to be told no consistently over and over and over? Are you willing to sacrifice your health on the altar of entrepreneurship? Is your mental sanity ready to go through the turmoil that a business owner would have? If you can't say, dude, no. then are you just fantasizing because it's a trend? Are you fantasizing that, hey, the grass is greener over there and therefore I think it'd make a lot of sense? See, I found myself this last 2 years working as an employee, thinking to myself, what am I doing? I'm wasting my life. I found myself as the last year saying, is this all there is? 45 years old, 30 years as a business owner, impacted thousands of people, national accolades, books, prestige, finance, heartache, turmoil, pain, wear and tear, mental anguish. And yet, as I'm sitting in my own position over Christmas of 2023, as I'm thinking through this, where am I at? And some people say, you're just having a midlife crisis. I don't think so. I think I've already had that one. I don't think so. I think this is a tempus fugit. It's a Latin term for time is flying. There is so much impact. There's so much within my head that I want to create, that I want to pour out, that I want to drive into people who sincerely need help, that I can't sit on my laurels, that I can't be comfortable within the present status quo. Well, Jesse, you're just greedy. No. Not at all. I see so much need. Some of you listening to this podcast right now, if you stay with us for this length of time, some of you listeners are going through one of the darkest periods of your entire life right now. I know an individual that I had the opportunity to speak into this individual's life that is going through the fire, dealing with cancer, dealing with divorce, dealing with heartache. There are people like that everywhere. They're just hurting, that they need to be encouraged. They need to be inspired, and they need to be educated on how to move forward. What's interesting about all this is I think through the entrepreneur versus intrapreneur, and we look at it, it comes down to, do you truly know who you are? What God has uniquely designed you for? What His mission for your life is that no one else can assign to you, that it burns like a fire within your stomach, that it burns like a fire within your being. Do you know that? Over my career, I've found myself asking that question many times. What's next? Why am I doing this? And many times it's like a lamp. The words a lamp into my feet and a light in my path. Two different reflective luminous types of objects. A lamp only allows you to see what's near around you. Whenever I go camping or hunting, I have a lamp mode on my headlight, and it just kind of shines the ground about 4 or 5 feet out in front of me. Many times as we go through life, it's just 4 or 5 feet in front of us. Now, I know where I'm headed. I know the destination. I'm the entrepreneur. I know where I want to get to, but all I can see is what's in front of me, and I have to react very quickly. I have to react quickly if there's a snake in the way or an alligator. I've had that happen. I got to react quickly versus a light. Many times we want to shine the light in front of us and be able to see directly where we're headed, know all the obstacles, know everything around us. But that's not life. So friends, as we challenge ourselves, as I try to encourage you, let me ask the question just right off the bat. If you're a business owner, should you be a business owner? If you're an entrepreneur, are you designed to be an entrepreneur? If you find yourself in this intrapreneur position right now, should you be? Are you in the right seat personally to where you are the intrapreneur? If you're not, if you don't know, if you need some coaching, we can help. We can help. Can't wait to show you the stuff we have coming out through the Financially Simple experience. It, I believe, will change millions of people's lives. I believe it will. Leave you with this. Go out and make it. Got to make it a great day, friends. It's not going to happen by accident. Take care.